666.
Saudi Arabia will ultimately consider cutting the rate of value-added tax, which was increased to 15% from 5% in 2020. Minister of Finance Mohammed Al-Jadaan said this Tuesday. The VAT rate was tripled in 2020 to shore up finances hit by low oil prices as the COVID-19 pandemic hit global demand. Al-Jadaan expected that the kingdom would witness a 7.4% growth in 2022. He also expected that inflation in the country to be around 2.1 and 2.3% by the end of the year. So basically a general update, but I really wanted to include this because I think this is an interesting consideration that they've put out there.
Very interesting consideration. It's not easy to either add a new VAT or increase it. It's also not easy to decrease it or get rid of one if you have a plan to bring it back at some point. This is very interesting, though. I mean, oil prices are high now in Saudi Arabia, and the VAT was really introduced because oil prices were lower and they needed to shore up government finances. But this is the first thing we've mentioned on adjusting the VAT since they raised it to 15%. And so it's interesting. They said it's not going to happen anytime soon, as you noted in the blurb, just, because they still need to shore up finances, they say. So, but it's interesting that it's been being floated and just generally mentioned.
Well, I think it's important because every government has a compact with its people. Mm-hmm. And I think this government, this Saudi government, is moving from positive and confidence building behavior to the next. So, in other words, I think the behavior during the pandemic was very positive. What we're seeing in terms of their fiscal responsibility is very positive. What we're seeing in terms of how they're signaling the private sector is very positive. We have to remember that in 2016, all the GCC countries said, all right, let's all do a VAT and let's coordinate it. But of course, that's not what happened. And as of today, what you have is Oman and the UAE have 5% VATs. Bahrain just went to 10%. Qatar and Kuwait have still not introduced VATs. And in this context, for Saudi Arabia to get into first, introduce the 5% in January 2018, and then in the middle of a pandemic, and essentially to support the economy, asking the private sector and individuals to move to a 15% VAT in July 2020, which again is 3 times what it is in UAE or Oman, and 3 times what it was just since the early 2018. It's a big ask. And I think it's incumbent upon, and I think at that point, Mohammed bin Salman said, at some point we will revisit this. But their point was, the ask from the government was, in this time of trouble, we need to up what we're drawing from you, the private sector, and you, the individual Saudis. And I think part of that compact and part of that agreement, part of that endorsement of trust and the part of the responsibility of the government is to come back and revisit it and eventually back it back down. And I think if they do that, I think that just creates a tremendous amount of trust among the populace.
Agreed.
This is the government said this is what they needed. They said this is what they would do, and they did it. And so I'm hoping that they do back it down, and not in not too distant future. I don't know when, but it would really, I think, reflect well on the integrity of the government and what it has done what it said it would do.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was an important thing, and it's still speculative, and but again, that marker is out there for the Saudi government to say, all right, we hit you hard because we needed it, but it was on the premise that we would back it back down.
Sort of a nice weapon to have as a form of economic stimulus as well down the line. You never know. And if, you want to just jumpstart the private sector, if, something happens, hey, look, your VAT went down to 7%. That's a huge difference. That's a huge practical difference, both for consumers and for the business community. So it's a nice sort of like built up economic, it
is.
Weapon to use.
They have that in their pocket. Let's blow up consumer spending. Drop the VAT.
Yep. I remember right before the VAT was introduced, there were a lot of stories about people going to rush to buy televisions and different stuff right before it raised, because a 10% raise from 5 to 15 is significant. If you're buying $1,000 TV, it's, so just very interesting story. Yeah, we will keep our eye on that here. But it was interesting to see it mentioned for sure.